Hi, folks. My name is Diamond, and today I'm hosting MHNA's sixth Zoom show series episode. Today we're here with Toronto District School Board Trustee Anu of Scarborough-Rouge Park, representing Thomas L. Wells Public School in our community. So thank you for joining Morningside Heights Neighborhood Association today, Anu. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Today we will discuss COVID-19 and its impact on schools, specifically in Ward 22, Scarborough-Rouge Park, which would include Thomas L. Wells Public School in Morningside Heights. For our first question, how does the Toronto District School Board support teachers with resources and knowledge to inform students and parents about COVID-19 procedures and protocol in schools?
Thank you for that question. So yeah, COVID definitely took us all by surprise. We were not prepared for it, like most of the country. So a lot of the learning had to happen on the go. And so it's been a bit messy, but I think we're in a better place now than we were in March. So a lot of the supports that we've been giving teachers include things like training for virtual school, which I'm sure is not as adequate as we would have liked it to be, but
Right.
considering the amount of time we had to prepare, I think the board has tried its best. And in terms of our safety protocols, we've worked very closely with Toronto Public Health. And so they've come into our schools and they've sort of helped design sort of the things that we needed to do to ensure that we have a safe learning spaces. And so a lot of that's sort of where the support's gone. And our principals have been great, and they've been doing a lot of that training with their teachers as well.
Hear that. So how can teachers reassure students and parents that reopening protocol minimizes risk?
So, I think a couple of things we've done at the school board. So we worked again with Toronto Public Health, and they've come up with maps of what's considered sort of hotspots or where there's been high numbers of COVID. And in those areas and in those schools, we've reduced the class sizes and we've capped them at 15. So that was one way that we've tried to tackle the spread. We wanted to reduce class sizes in more areas, but that requires funding from our provincial counterparts. So that's something that we continue to sort of advocate for. And so, that's, smaller class sizes. And then, of course, we made masks mandatory from SK to grade 12, JK to grade 12. And so a lot of boards are, they've not, I think many boards start in grade 4, grade 3s and up, but the TDSB had made the decision that we wanted all our children to wear masks. There was a lot of hesitation at the beginning from parents who had younger children, but now that we're in the schools, they've, seen that, the kindies are keeping their masks on and so they've been really great with that. So that's been also really reassuring to parents. And then, of course, we do daily screenings. And importantly, when there is a case that's identified in our schools, we immediately shut down the classes and make the classes quarantine at home. So we've been very, very proactive in trying to stop the spread as much as we can.
Yeah, it's very important now. I think, unfortunately, M1X region has been one of the highest in Toronto for cases. So to know that schools, first and foremost, are doing what they can to minimize risk is very helpful. So what are some ways that TDSB ensures the budget equitably supports all learners during this time?
So, I think what we're doing right now, of course, is, as I mentioned, we've tried to since we weren't able to get the budget that we had wanted from the province, we've tried to approach it from an equitable lens. And so when we decided which schools were going to be sort of getting the extra funding for smaller class sizes, it was based on data on sort of the hot spots or the places with more numbers of cases. And so I think, that's sort of been the major piece in that regard. But I think, a lot of that work has already been done. I think the next focus, and this is where I think the conversation needs to be going, is what are we going to do post-COVID? And I touched upon it a bit in the previous question, but as I mentioned, we are seeing that there is, from other regions where they are doing the research, so we need to do this research as well, that the children, there's a learning gap between those who are in bricks and mortar schools and those in virtual schools. And so when they return to bricks and mortar schools, there's going to be a gap in learning, especially in the younger grades where, those years are so crucial. So how do we now, and this is going to be heightened in parts of the city that learning gaps were already wide to begin with. And so, this is going to be something we all need to be advocating for, whether we need, more funding for reading coaches and math coaches to work with students who are now having to reintegrate back into sort of, the bricks and mortar schools. That's going to be really interesting. Yesterday, we had our finance committee meeting where we had to, we did a sort of consultation, I guess you can say, in terms of the asks that we want to make for the province for our next budget. And that was one of the concerns I've been championing, is that when students do come back, things are going to look different. And we already had gaps in our system, and COVID has heightened them and made them much more undeniable. And so now we're going to need to sort of address them before it gets worse.
Definitely. With the increase of COVID, it's getting quite scary and out of hand to an extent, but hopefully with the vaccine, we can kind of plateau what's rising. On that note, based on these increases, is there a possibility that winter break might be extended? And if this is the case, what should parents and students expect this time around?
Yeah. So so there was a lot of sort of conversations about this. I saw in the media, and some people were saying what's going to happen, and some are advocating that there should be a break. But yesterday, the province did send a memo to all school boards saying that we should convey to all our students that there is a possibility that we might not return immediately after the break, and so that students, tomorrow being the last day, they should bring home, devices or anything that's left at school that they will need. So sort of act like you might not return necessarily, and then bring all the things that you need to, because we know in March what happened was the shutdown just happened and people weren't able to get their stuff till months later. So you don't want to be in that position. So right now, especially, I'm not, public health expert, but with the numbers the way they are at, and the calls that we're getting from, I think it was a hospital association today, and the top doctors, they're making sort of the call is that we might have to get into more strict lockdown. So it looks like there is potential for a more steeper lockdown in January.
So then when should students expect to return back to school if this is the case? Like, should students and parents be preparing for a return to online learning maybe?
Yeah. So good question. So this time online learning will look different than it did in March. So we are much more prepared because a lot of our schools actually are already on virtual schools. So a good chunk of our students are already in virtual schools. and actually higher in our ward and in Scarborough. And so and the students who are in bricks and mortar right now, their teachers, there has been that expectation that they will very quickly adapt and move their learning online. And there's been more structure given from the province. I know last March, there was a lot of sort of differences, right? There were some teachers who were, fully engaged and really quick to adapt. And then there was maybe some teachers who needed a bit more support. And the thinking now is there's more clear guidelines from the province in terms of how many hours teachers have to do synchronous learning, and sort of the expectations are a bit more clear. So there should, the intention is that would be very easy to move it online. But there will be hiccups. Our movements into virtual school has not been the easiest. But, we have to always kind of think that this is a huge system. We have over 200,000 students, and to kind of manage all of that, it takes a bit of time. But yes, that parents shouldn't feel that their child is going to lose any learning. That adaptation should happen quickly.
Definitely. That's good to hear. So, well, we're done with the questions. So thank you, Trustee Anu, for giving us your time today. And on behalf of Morningside Heights Neighborhood Association, we appreciate your contribution to our community. So to you, Anu, to everyone watching, to our communities, please stay safe and remember that we're in this together.